want to show you how to leave evidence of species on a deer here in British Columbia. Recently, the regulations changed and we have to leave the tail attached to an edible portion of the animal. In this case, we are deboning an animal so we can pack it out, and we have to leave the tail attached to the hind quarter. And I'm just going to walk you through how we do that. So you can see here, I've isolated the tail from the rest of the hide. I've skinned around it. The tail, this is the tail here, and they want to be able to see that to tell if it's a mule deer or a white tail. So this is a mule deer. And now the tricky part is, and I've actually been working on how to do this properly, but because the tail isn't really attached by much other than a small bone, if you skin just the tail off, it has a chance of just completely falling off and then being detached from the edible portion of the animal which you're trying to keep together. So what I do is I leave a bit of a patch of hide that runs up onto the top of its rump here. So this is just an extension of its tail that I've isolated. Now I've got a fairly big chunk of hide that's attached to this tail. Now the only downside of doing this is that you've got all this hair, and you can see that there's a bit of blood and other bits that I don't particularly undesirable things next to what is the edible portion of the animal. So what I do just to isolate that is I take a plastic bag, and I'll put the tail in the bag, try to get as much of the hair in there as I can. And tape it on there. So still not perfect, but that's going to stay attached. It's going to be relatively clean, which is good. So the other thing I'm going to show you is how to keep evidence of sex attached to the same quarter. So I'll show you that next. What I've done here is I've started taking off this quarter that I'm going to leave with the hide attached. And what I'm doing is I'm running, I started my sort of landmark cuts for taking off the quarter. I'm going to run this cut down here along this, hitting the spine, and then I'm just going to jog out, and I'm gonna cut down here. So what I'm going to try and do is take this tail piece off along with the rest of this bit, and it's going to be a nice big portion of this rump up here attached. So yeah, so this doesn't actually, I haven't cut all the way down here. This is just me actually coming up and skinning that square of hide to isolate that hair piece. So what I'm going to try and do is I'll peel it off from the other side, which I'll show you next. But I left the penis here. This is the penis, or section of the penis, and I've left it here. I've cut the other quarter away from it, and I've cut right down to the pelvis here. And I'm going to start by cutting the pelvis while leaving this piece attached here. So there, see how it's coming with the quarter now, and it's attached here. So that should be good enough for evidence of sex and species. So I'm going to go ahead and start taking this quarter off, and then I'll show you what I do about the tail here in a minute. So I'm just following, letting the weight of the meat come down. I've got something to keep it up off the ground here. And I'm just following the pelvis down. If you're not familiar with doing this, I always just feel with my fingers first, get my fingers out of there, and then drop down again. Okay. Now I'm coming up to a little tail bone here. And cut around that. Now, what I want to make sure that is I'm taking out this whole piece with this attached. You kind of see there. What I'm trying to do is keep that all attached. I'm going to keep skinning tight to the bone here. Have another look here. Tail piece along with this quarter. Now that the quarter is pretty much freed, let me just free it right up here. I've kind of met the landmark cut that I was talking about. So that's pretty much free there. It's just this one little section here with the tailbone coming out. I can feel the tailbone here. So I want to cut just up of the tailbone somewhere, try and work my knife through one of the vertebrae. Not as easy. There it is. All right. So now you can see what I've done here. I've got a fairly significant piece of hair holding on to this top part of the rear quarter. The problem I've had before is when I've just wrung it just around the tail, it's just a little bit of fat holding it on. And, okay, so I just want to show you what I've done here. This is my hind quarter, the edible portion. I've got my evidence of species here, which is the tail. And you see that I've left a fairly significant patch of hair so that this tail stays attached to this quarter. If you just cut down and skin out the tail and try to leave it on, it'll actually it'll fall right off the quarter. So I've extended that patch of hair up onto the rump here, which will hopefully allow it to be secure enough that it won't fall off. Obviously the downside, it's more hair that's going to go inside your game bag. That's going to be part of the transport, which I'm not a huge fan of, but for now that's the regulation, is to keep this attached to an edible portion. Kind of tricky to do if you're trying to do if you're trying to pack out your quarters. Just don't forget, on the inside here we've got our evidence of sex attached here, just a piece of the penis. You only need a couple inches to demonstrate it's a penis, so that's plenty enough. And you can just have a look on the inside here. What I've done, just left that fat and tissue to help hold on to the tail. So hopefully that helps. You'll be in compliance here in British Columbia for evidence of sex and species on a deer here in BC. Keep in mind that for moose and elk, you're required to keep evidence of species. It's just a patch of hair. I usually at least leave a little patch of hair at the top, which is much cleaner and much easier to deal with than this system. So for now, this is what we have to do. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. You can check out our webinars online, and we've got all kinds of cool workshops and courses you can check out as well. And there's a podcast, so check it out. Okay, thanks so much.